You ever wondered what your purpose is? I feel like we all have. Without a clear sense of purpose, we can feel lost, confused, even depressed. And especially as starseeds, we come here with perhaps an innate sense of knowing that we're here for a reason. And yet, it can be difficult at times to really put your finger on what it is that you're desiring to bring forward. And so that's why I am so grateful to be connecting with Matthew John today. Matthew is an internationally renowned spiritual teacher and intuitive healer, and he has found his mission as a starseed, helping Lightworkers all around the world to really discover their purpose and bring forward their divine path of service. And we're going to be talking all about discovering your purpose and really exploring aspects of what that means, looking at it from an astrological perspective, looking at it from a multiverse perspective. So I am just so grateful to connect with you, Matthew. Welcome to the Soul Collective.
Thank you for having me, Emily. I've been really looking forward to this. That was a wonderful introduction. It really laid out kind of the landscape for what we're going to fill in today with our discussion, and it's going to be great. People are going to really enjoy this talk.
Yeah, I feel like that, this is just such an important topic. I, resonated with it so deeply because there can be such a deep feeling of I am here for a reason, but what is it? Right?
Right.
How do I bring it forward?
Right.
And
It's
so,
funny. It's the most common question that I actually get asked by far in my work is, what is my purpose? And whenever I get asked it, I always have to pause and kind of explain a little bit how purpose is very multifaceted. It's, the ego mind really would love to have the simplicity of, oh, my purpose is this one thing. And usually in our minds, it's something to be, like a career or a role in the world, or it's something to create. But in reality, that's just one aspect of a much larger scope of what purpose actually is, right? Purpose is quite multifaceted.
absolutely. Yeah. So let's start at the very beginning. I'd love to know from your perspective, what does purpose mean from, really how we choose to incarnate here?
Yeah. I guess let's kind of, if we're going to talk about that, we should probably go all the way back to what the purpose of life is itself. And I know that's a really huge question, right? That's something that like every person on the planet thinks about at some point, and probably even animals, I would say, ponder at some point. What is the reason for existence? And in my view, and these are all just my views, I've been spent the better part of the last 10, 15 years trying to figure this all out, and I'll spend the rest of my earthly incarnation trying to figure this all out, right?
Mhm.
But to me, life is all about evolution. It's all about an upward evolution of consciousness. It's about becoming more and more refined, becoming more and more ascended. That term ascension is thrown around a lot in our wonderful New Age community. And to me, that is the whole purpose of life itself. There's, we were talking a little bit about astrology beforehand, and you're a Virgo, and I'm a Virgo moon. And so I have an affinity for the Virgo aspect of life, which is the logical, the left brain, the explainable, right, part of existence. So I was searching for a long time to try to be able to better explain and better understand, and then better be able to explain to others what this whole thing of life is, why we're here, what ascension is. One of the most important things that happened recently for me on my journey of that is discovering the works of a wonderful author named Todd R. Deviney. He channeled through a pair of books called Expansion for Ascending Consciousness, book one and book two. And I read those books, dug into them, underlined, highlighted, and just became fascinated with his channeled model He's a QHHT practitioner who channeled through all this material of what life is, kind of from a quantum physics standpoint. And by the way, I ended up doing 6 hours worth of shows with Todd, which can be found on my YouTube channel. If people want to just type in Matthew John, I'm really easy to find. But fantastic stuff, and I definitely recommend getting Todd's books. But essentially, going off his model, which I very much agree with now, the idea is that all of life pretty much begins as a single photon that is donated from a planetary consciousness. It will now contain the baseline frequency of that planetary consciousness. And from there, that single photon will now divide into 2 photons. And this is what a twin flame journey is in one aspect for an organic consciousness or an earth seed consciousness, which basically means you're a native soul to a space-time envelope or a planet, we could call it, right? We're talking about starseeds, which we're not. It being a starseed inherently means that you and I and people watching this that are starseeds are not native. Our souls are not native to Earth. We're kind of here on a study abroad. And I'll get into that in just a moment on how that works. But let's start with the organic consciousness. That single photon divides into 2. That photon starts to build more light and create more photons around it until it builds a rotation. That rotation continues until it creates what is a toroidal field with an empty column in the middle. And that toroidal field expands and expands and expands through repeating incarnations. And the repeating incarnations will start out with very simple life, microbial life and plant life. And plants are very intelligent, especially trees, et cetera. But it's what we would call a first density experience. Moving up into the animal kingdom would then be a second density experience. And there's varying levels of complexity of a second density experiences. And really, from a scientific standpoint, if we look at the complexity of brain structure, and if we compare, for example, the complexity of brain structure of like a fly that lands on you and you swat away to your dog. Dogs are incredibly intelligent. They can be taught to do so many things. They're very empathic, right? So a dog is going to be a much higher level second density experience than a fly, but your dog probably at one time was some sort of insect. That's soul. So a soul is a photonic field of light that was once one photon, as built more and more complex of a structure until it's able to incarnate in more and more complex bodies. Then the next level up would be a third density experience, which is the human kingdom. And in the third density, a whole world opens up of possibilities, of complexities, of themes that can be explored. And to relate astrology to this, I like to look at the zodiac wheel as every possible theme that you could find in life divided into 12. You can take anything going on in the news or in your own life or has happened or could happen, and you could place it into a theme of one of the 12 signs, right? And so the complexity of the possible experiences for a third density human is going to be much more complex than a second density animal. Dogs have complexities of where to hide their toys or how to relate to other dogs, how to relate to the human emotions, sadness, happiness, all that. It's very complex. But, when you get to a human, now you're talking about careers and language, more complex language and money and all sorts of things that the animal kingdom doesn't have, right? And then there's even higher levels. The fourth density would be an ascended human, or a human that is in unity consciousness, where now humanoid is a better term because you can be non-human and still fall into these categories. But a being that has now is experiencing a merging of consciousness, a merging of consciousness from all of the individuated third density consciousnesses into a fourth density, starting to merge into one planetary body. Fifth density is going to be that sort of same unity field experience, but now in a holographic body, no longer flesh and bones, but holographic flesh and bones, so to speak. It's a light body compared to a physical structure to the body. Sixth density now is going to be one unified experience of all. I like to explain it as, imagine you had a million different fifth density holographic beings that each are a drop of water. You now put those 1 million drops of water into a bucket. What happens when you put drops into a cup or a bucket? It conglomerates, and you can't it's no longer distinctible, if that's the word, distinguishable between the individuals and the whole. So all of life is always merging. It's all in a process of merging towards something greater. That's part of evolution ascension, is moving from being individuals, because in the third density and the second density in the animal kingdom, we're very much, our perception of life is usually only as individuals, except for family. The idea of family is something that in the second density and the third density, even plants have that idea of family, but there isn't an understanding or an experience of being part of an entire whole yet. But as we move up the ladders of consciousness, move up the dimensions or densities, it becomes more and more about being a part of a whole. A sixth density is a planetary consciousness. All the stories and the Akashic records of all the individuals still exist, and the individual energy field still exists, but it's now operating as one planetary body. And that carries a tremendous, unfathomable amount of photonic energy with it. And with that comes the ability to fractalize or fragment, which means you can imagine it's this one big bubble of light, and it's now producing a smaller bubble. It's like birthing a bubble, which is different than birthing a single photon. It's birthing a very developed soul that's already a photonic field. And then that soul can be directed anywhere. That soul can be directed to Earth or anywhere else. And that's in my view and Todd's view, this is what a starseed is. A starseed is a piece of a much larger consciousness, which would be a sixth density or higher. Sixth density is a planetary consciousness. Eighth density is a star system consciousness, and 10th density is a galactic consciousness. And it's a piece that comes from there. So that is the higher self, and then it's directed somewhere specific in space-time. And it's a process of adjusting frequency. And the visuals, like your car radio tuning from 104.9 FM, which is this high sixth density place, down all the way to like 93.9 FM, which is a third density. You have to really tune down your frequency in order to be able to operate in a lower density. And once you can, then you're now a part of, if you're coming to Earth, you're now a part of the Earth's astral field. And as a part of the Earth's astral field, you're now entered into the, what I believe, and this is, debatable, I believe it is a mandatory reincarnation process when you come into the Earth's field. And I feel that there's this legacy of that mandatory reincarnation process that may have long time ago been put into place by a negative, an NAA or a negative alien agenda, perhaps. But regardless, I do believe there's a mandatory reincarnation program, meaning you have to continue to reincarnate basically until you ascend out of here, until you ascend into a fourth density. When you ascend into a fourth density, you now have the freedom and the ability to do whatever you want. You can come back or you cannot come back. And the ironic part is, like, so many starseeds, most of the people I talk to in my work are starseeds, and it's a big part of my work. I do the starseed discovery sessions, but it's very common. I hear from people like, oh, I'm so sick of being here. I didn't want to come here. I must have been forced to come here. There's no way that I would have voluntarily chosen to come here. I want to get out of here. And the ironic part is that once we ascend to like a fourth density experience, we may want to come back voluntarily, because it's such an experience of, it's such an expanded awareness, and it's such an experience of love and unity and peace and connection. And a lot of us are actually starting to get there right now. Like, literally, you and I and many people that are watching, because of the spiritual work that we've done, because of the ascension programs that have been initiated by our soul or our higher consciousness, not necessarily consciously, but kind of, we've all had experiences of kind of things just turning on, and not all of us, but a lot of us, and I know you and I have. And we're starting to be pushed forward by that energy of our photonic field of our soul to ascend from the third density into that fourth density. And a lot of us are already feeling that sense of peace and love and unity more often, where it's like, despite, I mean, if you look at the news, there's horrible things going on in the world. We're very lucky, I believe, to be here where we are in this country right now. It's a very safe place overall. But we're starting to experience in our real bubbles, in our worlds, our individual worlds, that experience of unity and peace and love. And it's like, yeah, this is great. I want to be here. I want to be on the new earth. I'll
Yeah.
be here as long as my soul wants. This is awesome, right?
Yes. Yes, truly. And I feel what you're talking about so deeply. I mean, I think that we have the ability to connect to our multiversal nature more and more. And there is a lot of support at this time. And
Yeah.
so I want to ask you about the lower three chakras and
Yeah.
how
Okay.
that relates to really this time period that we're in.
Great. Yeah, I didn't expect that question, but it's an awesome question. So the lower three chakras are, these are our safety and security and our ego structures. This is who we are as an egoic identity, as someone, the root chakra is about survival. And unfortunately, we all know what's going on in the world right now. There's a lot of millions and millions of people, not just the war, but people who are in starvation in many places, hundreds of millions, actually billions of people who are really not in a safe place. There's not enough food, they're in a war zone, etc. And so when the root chakra when that basic safety and security is not able to be met, that's going to inhibit the upper chakras from being able to flourish and open. So that's someone that still their soul has chosen likely for them to have that experience for now. And later in this incarnation, they may have a different experience, or in a subsequent incarnation, they'll have a different experience. And I know, and I don't mean to ever say that like someone who's starving is chosen. That's not true at all. You were born, you had nothing to do with it. But from a soul level, there's a plan. I've spent years looking at this. I very much believe that good or bad, everything major that happens to us, and especially where we're born, where our parents are, talking about astrology, when we're born,
Yeah.
and where the stars are, and then the planets, is pre-planned by our soul. But there's a purpose to it. It's never to. It's it would be hard for someone who's in a war zone or someone who is starving to look at this sort of material and give much credence to it, because it can seem like, again, you're just stuck in that place of just trying to survive, which is very much kind of what the second density is like in the animal kingdom. What is it like to be a squirrel or or a rabbit, like always having to look over your shoulders, and there's predators everywhere, and it's just, life is just about getting enough to eat and avoiding predators. And for the root chakra, as humans, it's the same exact thing, is that the root chakra is about avoiding predators and about having enough food, water, and shelter, and safety, medical care, etc. And unfortunately, a third of the planet is not there yet. And there's all sorts of darker societal structures that have created the possibility for that to be the case. But there's a lot going on too, as far as the collective consciousness and what our path is as a collective. But anyways, that's the root chakra. The sacral chakra is going to be our experience of being able to enjoy life. If you're not in a place of being safe and secure and having enough to eat and enough water, how the hell are you going to enjoy life? How does someone in North Korea really enjoy life if they don't have those root chakra needs met, right? So again, as the chakra, you need the chakra below it to really allow the chakra above it to kind of flourish. And then and of course, sexuality is also one of the main themes of the sacral. And then the solar plexus is going to be, it's about who we are as an individual, who we are as an ego personality in this body, how consciousness expresses itself through an ego, which is not a bad thing. It's a necessary and wonderful experience, actually, of being an individual being, is being in a body and having an ego personality. The consciousness, I always like to tell people to perceive the consciousness as being located behind your eyes. Okay, kind of right here, like an inch and a half or 2 inches back. That's the seat of consciousness. That's the part of you that never dies. When someday you die, that part still exists. It'll just be a different experience of that existence. And at some point you'll have a different body to go along with it, right? But the ego, the seat of the ego is here, right? Which is why this is our power center, which is why people who are disempowered, people who don't have enough to eat, who are in a war zone or an abusive relationship or whatever, this chakra is going to be very usually shrunk, right? Because you don't have that sense of having a self-empowerment, of having the lower three chakras are about feeling as if you have the right to exist. You have the right to subsist, meaning have enough food, water, shelter, and you have the right to take up your rightful energetic space on this planet. There's an affirmation that I give people for the root chakra that I love. Just like a tree or a star, I have a right to exist. And I'd love people to write that down if you like that. Just like a tree or a star, I have a right to exist. Or I have a right to take up space. That's a good one. I have the right to take up space. I have the right to be here. It's very expansive, to feel that. And for a lot of empaths, a lot of women, a lot of times it's difficult sometimes because they've been pushed down by others. They've been kind of beaten down throughout their life to be small. And it happens to men too. And it happens to all genders, but it does happen to women a lot. So being in that space. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I think this is such an important conversation to have. Sometimes there's a focus on the upper chakras and,
right.
Opening the third eye and,
Yeah.
all these fun, gifts that can be awakened. But, if you look at the collective, if you look at humanity right now, like look at the themes that are up.
It's all here.
It's all
here.
the lower,
it's all here. Because it'll continue to be here until all 8 billion people or however many billion people there are have subsistence and have safety. That means no more wars. That means the power structure, the socioeconomic structure has to somehow change. The geopolitical structure has to somehow change. Because right now it's not possible because, Jeff Bezos could literally feed every starving person on the planet right now. The powers that be, the crazy dictators could stop all wars right now. But obviously there's a darker aspect to this planet that we're still dealing with. So until that's rectified, we're still, as a planetary body, trying to negotiate these lower three chakras. However, the exciting thing is that there is a minority, a group of beings that are you and I and hundreds of millions of others that we would call ourselves light workers, that are becoming very aware of all sorts of wonderful spiritual values and becoming aware of that heart chakra experience of unity. The heart chakra is about love, but not just romantic love. That's just one very small aspect of the heart. And actually, a lot of times romantic love, if you really dig into it, is more here and here. It's about sexuality and about codependency and need, right? Where the heart, like you and I are both dog people. The love, the experience of love and unity I have, it is such a pure heart chakra experience. There's no need, there's no codependency, there's no parental issues coming up. It's just pure love. It's unity with that animal, right? And the same experience, I'm sure you have this often. I know we're both nature people too. Just going and walking in nature, walking on the beach, walking in a forest, looking at the stars at night, listening to the silence of the night or just the sound of the birds. Like, it's very easy then to feel that sense of unity and that opening of the heart chakra. But this opening of the heart chakra is really, from a chakra perspective, the window opening for planetary change to occur.
Mm-hmm.
And it's us, the minority right now, but it will continue to grow in exponential way. Maybe not exponential or logarithmic, but definitely more than just gradual. It's growing like a 100th monkey syndrome of consciousness, right? And the more and more of us that fall into that category, we're adding that because we're all connected into a field. Like literally, we feel this from a fourth density or fifth dimensional experience. We can feel it. You and I can feel the connection that everything we do and everything we say and everything is inputting into a field. The field is what I like to call it. We're all connected into the field. All the plants and animals and everyone and humans on this planet, right? And when we have that heart opening and that heart experience, we're now consciously contributing more of that love and unity energy. And it's just imagine it's like you have this muddy field. Just imagine the planet and there's like a petri dish of all this muddy energy. There's all, and literally everything, you know, is like a Russian doll. And literally, if we look at the planet chemically, and there's oil spills and there's nuclear waste and there's chemtrail. Yeah, it's just filled with junk. But imagine that we're like taking this beautiful green or pink, like those are the colors of the heart chakra paint. And, you know, the more of us that wake up and pouring that into the petri dish, and it's a small contribution, but it's actually the only way this whole thing shifts, in my view, is that by more and more of us pouring that hard energy into the petri dish until it starts to change colors. And then on a physical level, hopefully, and it is starting to happen in some smaller ways, hopefully people that are in political power wake up a little bit and start to act more in line with the people's needs. It happens in little ways in governments, but hasn't happened in a huge way quite yet. And people that are in charge of big corporations find ways to work with the earth rather than against it. And actually there are, like Amazon, for all the, you know, ways they maybe don't treat workers very well, they are a very green company, which is a good thing. That's a good contribution, right? So things like that, like people that are in power in industry and in politics, when they start to wake up, but they start to wake up when the light workers are pouring more of this energy into the field. So it's just, it happens like a positive virus. Virus is a poor connotation, obviously now, but it happens like a positive virus of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it doesn't happen, you know, it's an interesting thing to, just as an aside, to ponder. Well, what if it doesn't happen? Because if you look at the outside world right now, it kind of seems like we're going backwards, doesn't it? Right? What if it doesn't happen? What if enough of us don't wake up? Then the question is, are we just kind of screwed? Does this end up being like Atlantis all over again? Or do we get help, more direct assistance? I believe that it's the latter, because I think we're at a, I think it's been decided on some levels in higher councils, maybe even the consciousness of the Milky Way herself, that this has to happen now. We can't repeat what happened in Atlantis. And for those that don't really know, it's likely that there was a nuclear war or some sort of however the word is. I'm not, you're Virgo, you're better with words than me. Cataclysmic war, where all sorts of really intense technology was used that just destroyed the whole planet pretty much. And then maybe after that, the pyramids were built. We can't repeat that. So like Todd says, he believes in the idea of an event, where he said he's seen it many times in his QHAT sessions, where there's just this giant flash coming from the sun, and it's like the darkness bleeds out of the planet like black tar. And maybe a metaphor, maybe literal, I don't know. He's, you know, he admits he's not even sure. This is just what he's been shown. I ask him, well, when is this going to happen? He says, I don't know. I really don't know. But he says it, you know, he thinks that if we can't do it, it'll be done for us. I'm on the fence about it. I optimistically agree that I I think this has to happen this time around, this ascension cycle, one way or another. And if we need help, I think it'll come. But I think right now we're being still completely 100% left to our own accord here. No direct assistance whatsoever, except maybe to stop something like a nuclear war. I think that's possible.
Yeah, I think there's different interpretations of assistance and how that shows up or doesn't show up. But I think you'll love this, being a Scorpio. Um, there's so much Plutonian energy at this point in time,
Yeah, there is.
and we have Scorpio South Node collectively. And I think,
Yeah.
one of the
The
things that
United States' is Pluto return is happening, right?
exactly.
Which is coinciding with the biggest war since World War II, right? Which is interesting.
Yeah. And the thing about Pluto is just the energy of this, Phoenix rising and that, transmutation. So
Yeah.
to your point in sharing is that while there are so many of us here to assist and to live our divine purpose, there is this period of rebirthing, of, alchemization that's taking place, which can sometimes feel like a collective dark night of the soul.
Yeah, it is a collective dark night of the soul. And I think it really began with COVID. And I think it's going to continue, or over just my opinion. And I don't know for sure. I'm just one guy trying to guess, but I think it's going to continue over the next 2 decades, really, this collective dark night of the soul. Within this, if this ascension is going to succeed, so much is going to change. So much about the financial system is going to have to change. And we're in the not just Scorpio South Node, but Taurus North Node. What is that about? That's about financial systems completely. That's all that it's about, pretty much. So it has to somehow shift, right? Same with Pluto. When Pluto, moves into Aquarius, that's a big deal too, because we've been in this Pluto and Capricorn period for a long time, which is Capricorn is the structure. It's the old patriarchal structure of the planet. It's the legacy financial system, the legacy structure. Aquarius is the internet. Aquarius is cryptocurrency. Aquarius is technology. Pluto
Yeah.
moving to Aquarius with Saturn is a big deal, and that's happening soon. It'll start to dip in, I think, one time this year, right? Or no, early next year. So
Yeah, and that's why I find like really, focusing on the lower three chakras so important during this time, because those are the feminine chakras, and you can think of it as like the divine feminine rising. You talked about Pluto and Capricorn. It's like kind of just the shifting away from the patriarchy, from systems and structures that no longer serve us. And I really feel like there's so much gold in really, focusing on those chakras clearing, and then also the front side of it, like the higher octaves of those, like bringing forward pleasure, bringing forward joy, your own
yeah,
personal power.
yeah, and to reiterate, like in order to really step into the magic of especially the upper two, well, the third eye, the crown, and then really the eighth chakra, which is above my head, which is at the eighth chakra, is starting to come online for a lot of people. Sometimes it'll just start as a little shimmer of golden light, but it can actually start to grow into a legit new chakra. And the magic of these upper chakras, yeah, you really need to have some sort of stability with the lower three in order to really effectively be able to experience that. If you don't, one of the very common things that happens, it's actually happened to me at one point in my journey, is you'll fall into a lot of illusion because of this chakra right here. And because this chakra will be wide open like that, but your root chakra is messed up. Your root chakra is like that. And your solar plexus chakra is like that as well. And you're going to fall into a lot of illusion and escapism. And that's where people, not to go off on a tangent, but people fall into a lot of illusory groups, like groupthink ideology about what's going on in the world. That's very Neptune-ish, very overly optimistic, very fairy tale-ish. This was rampant when the last guy was in office. I don't even want to say his name. The last guy was in office in the United States. This was a rampant issue in the New Age circles, especially. Not just, but it was. And it's that Neptune, because it's not a balance. There wasn't enough of a balance, perhaps. When you have this balance in the lower chakras, you're probably gonna be more in a level-headed ideological understanding of what's going on. Just my opinion on that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to, to hear and kind of tune into what is happening, what's happening planetarily, what's happening, and how really what happens on Earth really affects, the entire universe.
Oh, yeah, that's a great point too. Yeah. That's good. Let's start to expand out back to like Starseeds. So uh okay, supposedly that the way it works is what Todd describes, is that for every planet, so every star system has 4 planets designated for ascension. So in our star system, it would be Mars, Venus, Maldek, and Earth. Todd thinks Venus ascended. I think so too. Mars and Maldek probably didn't. Maldek probably blew up, and Mars had all sorts of problems on it. But, and mostly due to just an over aggressive masculine energy that was not able to be effectively balanced by a feminine energy. So Earth is going to be one of those planets, but there's going to be a corresponding planet across the galaxy in the corresponding quadrant directly across that is going to also be, if you think about the galaxy, a galaxy is a consciousness, and it's one breathing body. It's one body, and every star system is an organ, and every planet is a cell. You can see my shirt is a great representation of this, I think, right? That's why I wore this. But so if it's like cancer, if you have a certain group of cells or an organ that has fallen into dis-ease, you have cancer, then that cancer is going to affect the rest of the body. So if the Earth can't ascend past the darkness that has been kind of put here or allowed to be here, that like a cancer, that darkness can spread. You mentioned that you believe that you're an Orion starseed. Me too. I also have experience on some level, a remembrance of having lifetimes in Orion's belt when the Orion Wars were going on, which I very much believe are a real thing. And draconian beings were going around blowing up planets and just be doing horrible things to very peaceful civilizations, peaceful, 3rd, 4th, and 5th density civilizations. And so that had an effect on the whole galaxy. A lot of the idea of what goes on in Todd's books is that this is growing, like it was an experiment that originally the galactic consciousness of the Milky Way said, wouldn't it be an interesting experiment? This is not something that other galaxies have tried, to intentionally allow for negative consciousness to grow and proliferate unencumbered, with no rules whatsoever, to see what happens. Would it actually accelerate ascension? Would the negativity provide an impetus for positive 3rd, 4th density civilizations to ascend more quickly? When what happened is, like Todd says, well, wouldn't you know it, the dark beings really liked being dark, and they continued on their ascension path towards a 5th density negative experience, developed incredible destructive and controlling technologies, and just went around conquering, which is likely what happened in the Orion Wars. And I do believe, that same consciousness, that same group, part of, the same group of extraterrestrials is what's really at the top of the Illuminati pyramid here on Earth. So essentially, the idea is that this was as an experiment of this galaxy only, and it didn't really work. it just like a virus, like cancer cells, it just continued to proliferate until it's out of control. And the Earth, obviously, because if we just look at this planet and how messed up it is, objectively, comparing it to other planets, that are more ascended, we can see that, yeah, like a diseased organ or like a diseased group of cells, this planet's ascension is extremely important to the entire galaxy. And if the galaxy is out of balance because it has some cancerous organs or cells, then the universe is also one breathing, operating body. That would affect the universe negatively too, perhaps. And perhaps if it was allowed to continue unencumbered, what if negative consciousness was allowed to just take over the entire freaking Milky Way galaxy? That would be a huge problem, likely, for the entire universe. So it's in
Yeah.
the universe's best interest that that doesn't happen. So that's why, to bring it back, our planet's ascension is extremely important, because we're one of these planets that has been controlled forever by these dark beings.
I think it's important to, you know, connect with, because you mentioned dis-ease, and I think that um, one of the things that we have access to more and more, and you know this, as well as anyone, being an intuitive healer for, over a decade, is just this instantaneous, this acceleration of healing. And I think that's something that's really exciting right now, is that we have the ability to transmute so quickly. And if you look at that,
Yeah,
even
yeah,
on an individual level, it's not like there isn't this necessarily being trapped in sort of a karmic wheel. There's the ability to transcend and transmute, and even to transcend our own original divine blueprint, which is huge. We have free will, and so there's so much assistance available at this time. And I just think that it's very exciting to be to have that sense of mission, or being a starseed, a light worker, to anchor in more light on this planet. So really, when you talk about purpose, it's like, where do we begin? Because there's so much.
oh yeah. But that, I agree with all that. But if if people think about like everything that I was talking about up until now, I was outlining the whole big picture of
Mhm.
why it's so important.
Yeah.
But you're right, we have every tool available to us now to do that. As long as you're in a place of relative safety and security, you have every possible tool available to you now, on by tuning into shows like this and all the free content on the internet and books, and just learning to tune into your own consciousness and connecting with nature. Okay, let's kind of practicalize, because we're both Virgo aspects. Let's practicalize ascension, at least my view. Then I'd love to hear yours. We want to, first of all, we want to establish safety and security. That's crucial. And sometimes we can be I've experienced this many a time, like I'm in a safe place, like literally speaking, I'm in a safe place. Literally speaking, I clearly have enough to eat. Literally speaking, I am safe and sound and healthy enough. But the nervous system within does not feel safe for some reason. The nervous system feels like there's a predator right around the corner. That's the sympathetic or the fight or flight system. So learning to tame the nervous system, and there's many a tool out there to endeavor to help heal that. But learning to feel safe within is very important. Learning to feel safe within, digging into whatever traumas that happened in your past, in this lifetime especially, that have some sort of energetic resonance that affect you right now. So, because we all have something, most of us have something left. A lot of us have done an incredible amount of work, but a lot of us have something big left from the past that, even though it was 30 years ago or 3 years ago, it still affects us on a day-to-day basis. It affects our emotional experience. It affects how we communicate. It affects how we go about life. So whatever methodology works for you, whether it's working with someone like myself or working on healing the trauma within through talking it through visualization practices, through meditation practices, through energy healing practices, through whatever, That's important. So safety and security, trauma, transmutation, self-esteem. All right. How the hell are we going to ascend as a planet past being controlled by dark extraterrestrials if we feel like we're not worthy of it? So if we want it, we have to feel worthy as a human race of taking back this planet as ours. So we got to feel worthy as individuals as ascending, being that ego self, but being totally worthy as an ego self, as a consciousness in a body. That's very important. Learning to experience presence and joy is very important. Stepping out of the time matrix, stepping out of the program of past and future being the most important thing. This is where watching an Eckhart Tolle video every once in a while, rereading The Power of Now or A New Earth is just great. And I highly recommend that. I'm constantly sending clients Eckhart Tolle videos to watch, and I watch them myself. You know, remembering, or that Ram Dass book, Remember Who You Are, right? Just whatever gets you to be present and stepping out of that false mental time matrix construct is very important. Learning to be at peace. And then purpose. And this will be our segue into more individualized interpretations of purpose. Stepping into a service work purpose. What is it that your soul, what is it that starseed extraterrestrial part of you that exists somewhere else that has so much energy because it's so much, it's so far ascended, and really can see with a bird's eye view of the big picture of you, what did that part of you want you to create and step into on this planet? I'm very blessed that I've found that, but it's going to grow and shift. And 10, 20, 30 years from now, I'll have done so many more things. I'll have written books and who knows what else. But I've been able, been blessed enough to be able to step into that space. I know you have as well. But we're continuing to, that space evolves. But it doesn't have to mean being a spiritual teacher. It doesn't have to mean being a psychic or a meditation teacher. It doesn't have to have anything to do with the new age industry at all. You can be anything. You can be an accountant or a lawyer or a plumber or a construction worker or anything, or a teacher, but still be in that purpose. Because logically speaking, if every, there's 350 million people in this country, if every single person was a spiritual teacher, we'd have a lot of problems. There'd be no food, there'd be no roads, there'd be no cars, we couldn't exist as a society. We need spiritual teachers, but not too many of them, because we need other people in other roles. So how do we transform the education system from the inside out? Obviously, there also has to be some reform from the top down, which is obviously lagging, but getting people, Starseeds, Lightworkers, into the teaching profession, where they're with a loving heart energy, they're helping to, expand the minds of children and helping to, helping develop very healthy children. We need light workers and starseeds in the medical industry, obviously, as doctors and nurses, not just as alternative medical practitioners, but also as very more traditional Western medical practitioners who become more open to integrative therapies, for example, or who are better at listening to their patients. I've worked with, I've had autoimmune and neurological issues my whole life. I've worked with countless clients with autoimmune and neurological issues. It is such a common experience that we have of going to a normal Western medical doctor and them telling you they don't know what's wrong with you, or they think you're making it up, or they send you to a psychiatrist. It is such a common experience because they don't understand. They don't understand more complex neurological and autoimmune issues. That's got to change. And I know there's a lot of top-down pressure, like in every industry, to prevent that from changing, but it has to change. How does it change? It changes from the inside out, with light workers and starseeds becoming Western doctors and becoming more open. So every industry has to have light workers and starseeds as these, rogue, covert kind of consciousnesses in it to help transform said industries from the inside out. That's extremely important. So what is that for you? What is that feel? And a lot of people are going to be watching this and be frustrated. Like, I don't know, man. Like, tell me, Tell me. I want to know. And I would love to do a reading for anyone who, feels like that, of course. Go to my website. We could do a reading. But what is it like to figure it out on your own? Look at a couple things. First of all, what is your expertise? All right. What interests you the most? What do people most commonly ask you to help them with or ask you about? And what brings you the most joy? So those four things all are, and then a fifth one would be what can earn you either enough income to subsist, or if you choose, and there ain't nothing wrong with this. I was talking to a Taurus client yesterday who's got Taurus all over her chart, and I was telling her, like, your soul wanted you to be wealthy. And she totally resonated with that. Wealthy. And that's okay. People sometimes in this industry think that wealth is this horrible thing. It's not. It's just it's a Taurus aspect of life. It's very important. That's why it's on a polarity with Scorpio, which is the spiritual aspect, right? But the fifth thing of, because if it can earn you enough money, then it can be something you can do full time. If I wasn't able to do this full time, there's 0% chance I would be as much of an expert and as good of a speaker as I am right now about this stuff.
Yeah. And I want to say that, because sometimes there's this feeling of like, oh, but I have to do it full time. And if there's something that you're cultivating, it's like, try a little bit here and, in addition to, and follow that, which brings you joy.
It's got to start somewhere. And it's not realistic for the majority of people to do something that really feels more soul-based full-time. But ultimately, to become a real expert in most of the time, not all the time, you really ideally want to be doing it full-time, but it's got to start somewhere. I mean, I did this sort of stuff part-time for many, many years. It's only been in the past 4 years around that mark where I've done it full-time. So, it's got to start somewhere. You're right.
Yeah. And I feel like a key element of that too is just, the trust and the faith part of it. It's like when you set an intention and you're following your heart, like, I mean, clearly you had a calling or inner excitement or inner joy that you followed. You're following that curiosity. And I feel like, there is a certain amount of trust that's involved in that, because it's a path that's not perhaps as clear. It's not as linear. It's not as logical, but there's an element of, okay, I'm going to follow my heart and the universe is going to help support me.
Yeah.
And
for me, it definitely was, it's more of a, an unblazed path, finding my own way through the tropical forest with a machete, so to speak. But for other industries, it's it is going to be more clear cut. Some people are watching this and their dream is to become a doctor or a lawyer or something that is more kind of already cut out. And it's not that it's not cut out. It's just that it requires courage and self-belief and a lot of work. You got to be committed to work too. I work all the time. I work 365 days a year. That's not an exaggeration. But I enjoy it. I love it. It's almost an addiction because it's infinite. There's infinite things to learn. I'm always learning, and there's an addiction almost to helping people, I just love that feeling. I love the feeling of someone getting a benefit from speaking with me or working with me or reading my articles or whatever.
Spoken like a true Scorpio.
Is it? Yeah, intense, right? Right.
Yeah,
Everything is just super intense, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
But I think, for those listening, I feel like, and that's one of the things that I'm discovering as a Virgo who also really, loves to work, is just the balance. And I know this is something that you teach about too, is like finding that balance, finding that harmony, and really like knowing that we are consciously creating, our own path, and it could be working, 365 days.
Well, I will admit, hold on. Let me admit, I will admit that it is perhaps a little bit unbalanced in my own case, where I maybe work a lot more than what would be an ideal balance. However, I have a long-term vision. I have a very intense long-term vision of all the things that I want to create And I take a lot of supplements. I have a lot of cool alternative health devices. I live in a beautiful house. And so my expenses are high. So to me, taking everything into account, it's worth it to push a little bit and to work a lot. Plus, I don't like to turn people down ever. Usually, like, if you're going to book an appointment with me, it's like a month out, but I always try to squeeze people in no matter what. Sometimes people have an emergency situation. I try to, squeeze them in sooner. I want to help as many people as possible. So yeah, maybe in my case, it's a little bit unbalanced. I will admit that. But I have a long-term vision, and I think that's okay. I believe, maybe it's all my Scorpio and intensity, but I believe that it's okay to grind sometimes and sacrifice a little bit in other areas in order to create a long-term vision, because anyone out there that's ever created something magical, whether it be a business or being a successful actor or actress or athlete or music artist, they had that work, create long-term vision, laser focus.
I think it's fun for people to hear this and kind of hear like peek behind, the curtain, so
Yeah,
to speak,
right.
because everybody has their own process and their own unique way of creating. And I think it's so important to kind of tune into what works for you. And the beautiful thing is, to your sharing, is like, if you have a vision and you know your own style and really attuned to your own body and your own rhythm.
Your astrology too is a huge part of it. And
Yes, well,
that, you know. But and remember, Emily, where we're at right now. What season are we in now?
it's Aries season, fire,
Right. And isn't this
which
exactly
is a
what
great,
I'm
yeah,
talking about? Yeah, yeah. So I'm feeling that too. Like, it's part of it as I'm speaking about this right now. Maybe I'd be speaking differently in Scorpio season, but we're in Aries season. This
yeah,
is what it's all about. It's about grinding, working hard, having a vision, laser focus, working hard, moving your body physically. I love Aries season. I always feel really motivated. Most people
yeah.
do.
And one thing too is just to kind of like, if there is a feeling of overwhelm, spring is a great time to say, like, hey, let's focus on three things. What are three things that I
I
want
like
to
it.
move
Yeah,
forward this year?
I like it. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. I've gone through that cycle over and over in my life of trying to do too many things at once. Normally what happens with me is I'm constantly getting ideas, and I will put them on my phone in the notes or write them down somewhere. I'm lucky if I get to them 3 months later. Usually I get to them 3 years later. I'm not exaggerating. Like, I've had ideas that I had 2 or 3 years ago that finally I'm like getting to, which is okay. I mean, there's, a lot to take care of. Life is full of responsibilities. And I don't, I'm a single guy. I don't have a family to take care of. So there's a lot of people watching that are, mothers with little kids and a husband. And it's like, yeah, there's a lot to try to juggle. So don't overwhelm yourself. Make sure, yeah, you are doing those self-care routines. And Aries season is about that too, because Aries season is about taking care of the physical vessel. Aries is Mars. Mars is about the physical body, especially the vitalistic aspect of the physical body. So whether it's meditation or exercise or massage or acupuncture or chiropractic or whatever, energy healing, yeah, taking care of your physical vessel, sleeping enough, is really important. It's paramount.
Yeah, and I love that you hit on astrology too, because, I think that is another way to really attune to what your body needs, your own
Yeah.
rhythms and cycles. But what are some ways, we can kind of explore in terms of looking at the birth chart and exploring your soul purpose?
Yeah. Okay. So the two aspects I like to look at and the most are the North Node and your midheaven. And it gives us so much information just looking at those two aspects alone. Your Mercury and Mars are also great to look at as well. Of course, your Mercury is your throat chakra. It's how you're going to be communicating, and also kind of the ways in which you communicate with the world and with others, the way you perceive communication. I'm a Mercury and Scorpio, so everything like you touch on is very intense with me, right? And I like to to dig into depth of, whenever people talk to me, friends or even new people, they'll say something that most people just, take it for what it's worth. Like, oh, okay. But no, I say, oh, what do you mean by that? What does this mean? Let me play devil's advocate. I did this with you before the show about something we were talking about, right?
Yeah.
So I really like to dig in and ask questions. That's so that your Mercury is the way you're going to go about communicating. Mars is the way you're going to go about, my Mars is in Aquarius. So, for me, Aquarius is all, first of all, it's about the internet. And I've built my entire career on the internet, right? But it's also about how can I positively affect large groups of people? How can I positively bring that unity consciousness, into creation, which is my entire, thing. And also Aquarius being air is very much about what's behind me. I'm floating out in the stars here, right? So looking at your Mars and Mercury are good too. But the North Node is going to be, the lunar nodes change every year and a half or so, as we talked about. We're in Taurus Scorpio right now. Look at your North Node to see kind of what your soul wanted you to learn in this lifetime. Okay, so my North Node's in Aries, so my South Node's in Libra. So I come from, I don't have definitive proof of this yet. I'm still, spitballing it. It's we talked about this before the show. It's a working hypothesis for me, but I have a belief up until now, a working hypothesis, that approximately your last 3 lifetimes were in the theme of your South Node. So for me, and I have had perceptions of my last lifetime and of the Libra stuff, which was being indecisive, being codependent, being reliant on others in order to do anything. And now my North Node's in Aries. So my generation of the Aries North Nodes, we're about fierce individuality. We're about independence, entrepreneurship. It'd be interesting to look at statistics. Are there more entrepreneurs amongst North Node Aries? I would say it's got to be,
Oh yeah,
because it
I
fits
know
very well.
lots.
Do you?
Yes, I
Yeah. So
do.
those people are born around, I was born 86, so around 83, 87, 89, like, wherever the Aries, I don't know the exact dates, but it's 9, or no, sorry, year and a half. What am I talking about? So 86, 87, around that. I was thinking of a different planet, but yeah. So look at that North Node. It's kind of where your soul. So my soul, as an Aries North Node, wanted me to learn independence. I can see many times in my life the Libra indecisiveness and codependence being an obstacle and a barrier and something to overcome. So for me, I've done pretty well, but sometimes it'll still pop up. It'll still pop up where indecision is a really uncomfortable place for me, but at the same time, it's a comfortable place. And I can walk around. I've done this many times in my life, like literally spending days in indecision and avoiding everything else in my life. And sometimes literally walking around in circles, trying to make a decision, drawing my tarot cards 10 times and using 3 different pendulums and picking out of a hat and whatever. And it's intentional from my soul's perspective to help me to learn how to fiercely and courageously make decisions. And I will say the best decisions I've made in my life have been when I really didn't think about it and I just went for it. Like this house that I'm in, I just, I was looking at a million different houses to rent. And this one, when I saw it, I was just like, yeah, I'm taking it. I'm writing you a check right now. I'm taking it, but that's Aries North Node. So for me, now my soul is going to want me to continue. Your South Node is not only past lives and probably in some way or another, the past 3 past lives, but it's also early on in your life. So it'll show up a lot in childhood. And whatever your specific childhood trauma or however your parents didn't parent you so well, usually there's going to be some correspondence with the South Node with that, I found. And you have to overcome that in order to step into your North Node, which is where your soul wants you to go. Now, your midheaven is, the beginning of your 10th house. I look at Placidus. Do you use Placidus or whole house?
I
You use
do.
Placidus? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really interesting debate. And some people will swear that Placidus feels better. Some people, it's odd. I have yet to figure this out. Maybe you have some insight. Like 95 to 97% of my clients, the tropical with the Placidus seems to completely resonate. Then once in a while, there's like a client that for whatever reason, it doesn't at all. The whole house makes more sense, or Vedic makes more. I don't get it at all. I'm trying to figure that out. But I use tropical with Placidus. Anyways, the beginning of your 10th house, your midheaven, is going to be the kind of career. It's called your career point. It's going to be kind of the vibration of your career, the vibration of
Visibility.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like who you're meant to be as a role, you know.
Mhm.
So someone with a Cancer midheaven, there's some nurturing aspect to the role. Someone with a Leo midheaven, it's being out there, being visible in the public eye, being a model or being an actress or an actor or a music artist or whatever. You know, an Aries midheaven might be an athlete or a gym teacher or a personal trainer or whatever. So looking at those two aspects are my favorite, but I'd love to hear your insight as well, because you're very good at this stuff.
Well, I love those. And I love how you explain the nodes. Those are so important to look at in people's charts. And I also think Saturn's important to look at. You know,
Yeah.
Saturn really has a lot to teach us. And, you know, it keeps us on task. You know, it brings
It's
us
about
back.
longevity, right? Which is
Yeah,
important when we talk about purpose, because really, ideally, it's something that we're stepping into kind of for the rest of our lives, right?
exactly.
And
Yeah.
that's sad.
So
Yeah.
Saturn's really important. And then also Chiron. I always look at Chiron as well. Chiron is an
Interesting.
asteroid. Barbara Handclough has a phenomenal book on
Yeah.
Chiron. I highly recommend it. You know, Chiron really can, and, you know, show us where we have, you know, wounds that we're carrying with us. But really the beauty and the magic of that is looking at and exploring and attending to those areas of our lives. There's a profound sense of healing that we can bring to the collective. And, you know, just an example of that, I love the examples that you shared in your own personal chart. I have Chiron in the 10th house with my North Node. And so there's in the sign of Gemini. So there's, you know, perhaps like this resistance around visibility, around being seen, perhaps in, you know, previous lifetimes it didn't go so well for me,
Yeah.
and yet, you know, there is this desire to share,
Yeah.
that's you know, on my heart.
That's
So
cool. Yeah. That's cool. That's it's almost like your soul's mission is very much dependent on overcoming whatever those wounds are, whether they're from childhood or past lives or both, in order to step into the North Node fully, which is why they would be conjunct. So that's pretty cool. Um, yeah, the Chiron is a cool aspect. It's the way I like to describe it. It's your deepest wounding. For some reason, that I don't know. I like that word wounding in Chiron's case. Your deepest wounding,
yeah,
and it's going to reflect the deepest wounding from other lifetimes as well. Um, Chiron, FYI, I just learned this. I should have known this before. From an astronomy perspective, Chiron is a comet. Did you know this? It's actually a comet, and it's also known as a minor planet because they first thought it was a planet.
yeah,
Then they looked closer and saw it was actually a comet. So it's actually designated as both a comet and a planet. But in astrology, it's designated as an asteroid, but it's technically a comet,
a
which is
small, yeah,
cool.
yeah. So those are really great. You know, I feel like anybody listening could kind of dive into their own natal chart and look at some of those placements and explore those a little bit.
Yeah. And get, get an astrology reading with Emily or with myself if you want someone else to look in and kind of see what they feel. In my soul plan readings, what I do, I do take a look at the natal chart, but I'm also using other methods. I'm using my psychic vision to take a look at the life plan. I see it like a blueprint, and I see different major things in that blueprint, and that helps me to really I've been very good. It's one of the things I pride myself on, is helping people to figure out what that purpose is from the perspective of like career and or like projects, like what am a great way to look at it. I didn't mention this before, but it's like when you leave your planet, when you're on your deathbed, is like, what do you want to look back and say that you contributed to the whole? And
Mm.
that's a great way to look at purpose from a starseed perspective, because one thing that's going on is that, we're coming from a place out there, whether it's the Andromeda galaxy, like you and I are both from originally, or other places we're from in this galaxy. We're bringing a piece of our higher civilization here in some manner. So there's something that has something to do with that we wanted to share here. That's what I do in my Starseed discovery sessions with people, where I put people under hypnosis and I guide them. It's incredible. It's one of my favorite things. I guide them on an astral journey to their home planet or place of origin. And one of the things we always try to do is actually have them ask their guides that end up being there. Sometimes it's, their family members up there, or just people they work with up there, what they're wanted to bring to Earth, what they want from a starseed perspective, what did they want to produce on Earth. And there's all sorts of cool stuff have come out, in these sessions, different like new cool technologies, healing technologies and modalities and books and courses. And so for those starseeds and lightworkers that are meant to be more like spiritual teachers, which, I didn't mean to say like we're done with spiritual teachers, like I'm the last one. No, I'm not like saying that. Like there's obviously millions and millions of more that need to come out. I was just saying it can't be everyone. Some people, there's going to be a little bit different, and it's refreshing to me, because I do get a lot of people that are like, they're like, where I was at one point, where like I feel this very intense mission within. Like I remember being under a hypnosis once from someone that I was working with, and I just came out with this statement of like, I'm here to serve the collective in Ascension. I didn't even know what those words meant at that time. This was like a decade ago. And fast forward, well, now I totally understand it. So a lot of my clients are kind of where I was, at that point in time, and they're trying to figure out the specifics, the physical manifestation of it, the Virgo side of things, the Aries side of things, the Capricorn side of things. Like, how does it really actually come into play in the material world? The Taurus side of things. So I love helping those people, but also it's refreshing when I get people, that like, I just want to be an actor, like, or someone who's already an actor, so to speak. And I help them to develop and integrate their spirituality with acting, and getting bigger and better roles that serve that sense of purpose, and helping people to laugh, or helping people to experience drama or documentaries or whatever, filmmakers, a lot of musical artists I've worked with, helping them to just expand their presence. They're making people enjoy life and experience different emotions and vibrations with their music. So it doesn't have to be like energy healing, spiritual teaching, life coaching, whatever. It can be, and that's great, but it can be anything, really.
Yes. Love that. Love that. Love that so much. And I think it can be so powerful to connect with somebody to help really ground that into like aligned, actionable steps,
Yeah.
because sometimes it just is this big,
Yeah.
vast knowing.
And I'm so good at that as a Virgo moon. I so
I'm
often
sure.
take people, and you as a double Virgo, I'm sure you are as well. I saw often take people, they have kind of an idea, but there's just no practicality to it. There's no progression. I love the idea of logical progressions, and distilling a project or a vision into a logical progression, because really that's the only way it's going to actually get done. If not, it'll always just be kind of an idea that was dabbled with. But to really create, especially something like a business, and I know you work with people on business stuff sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And it's so important, isn't it, to have that logical plan, progression, the Virgo stuff.
It is. Yeah. And there's so much there to explore. I feel like we could go into like a whole nother,
Yeah,
you'll have to
sure.
come back on the show sometime because I'm enjoying this conversation so much.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love
Yeah.
to.
And I would say just, for anybody listening out there that is wondering, like, there's something in my heart that I want to bring forward. How do I do that? One thing that I would suggest is, what is the most, aligned next step that you can take that
Yeah,
is,
I like that.
courageous action
Yeah,
and just
especially for
simplifying it.
Aries season right now, all planets direct. Like literally, if you're watching this during April,
Yes,
before eclipse season hits, like now is a great time.
it is. So much support. And Matthew, tell everyone where they can go to connect with you, find more, if they want to connect with you for a reading.
Yeah, perfect. You are a divinehuman.org, all spelled out. And there'll be a link in the description box, right?
Yep.
Okay, great. You are a divinehuman.org. My YouTube channel will be in the description box as well. It's or you can just type in the search bar Matthew John. And my Instagram, I'm very active on Instagram. It's at Matthew John Healer. Very easy to get in touch with. I have a tarot course that one of my interests in life is tarot. I love the tarot. It's like the zodiac wheel where, I said you can find every theme, the 12 zodiac signs. You can find every possible theme in the 78 times 2 equals 156 tarot cards because you can read them up or down. So that's why I love the tarot as well. And it's very complex and there's a learning curve to it. And I love complex things. So I'm very good at teaching the tarot course. It's a 13-week comprehensive course, starts April 23rd. So if you're interested in learning the tarot the right way, whether you've never touched the cards, you're a beginner or intermediate, I'll take you to the next level. So I just want to let people know that's what I'm working on right now.
Awesome. That sounds amazing. Now, is that a live course or is it
Live course,
recorded?
13 weeks, 2.5 to 3 hour Zoom calls on Saturdays at 5 o'clock on the East Coast, 2 o'clock in LA. And if you miss the calls, it's no problem. You can just watch the recording. And it comes with the certification of completion based on how many hours you complete. It comes with a free reading with me as well, 45-minute reading. So it's a really good value. You can check out the details on my
Amazing. That's
website. Yep.
awesome. That sounds incredible. I will definitely check that out and we'll link to that in the show notes.
Thank you.
Matthew, this has been such an amazing
It's
conversation.
great. Yeah, this is awesome. I really enjoyed it. Time flew by.
Yeah, so many different avenues. Anything that you would like to leave listeners with?
Yeah. I had a note how to find a deeper sense of purpose in your daily life, because just one thing to leave everyone with is just, we talked so much about the macro purpose, both on, from the perspective of ascension, we're here to ascend and evolve. We're always evolving on that step ladder of consciousness. As starseeds, by the way, someday we'll merge back with whence we came, with that bigger consciousness. But in the meantime, we could end up on other planets having fourth and fifth density experiences. So, there's unlimited possibilities, but we're always ascending on a ladder. You ascend to a certain point, then like you throw your boomerang out to go to a lower density and then come right back. And it's just this constant repetition. And that's how there's all this growth. So that's the macro. We talked about the macro of your individual purpose as it relates to career and projects. And when you're on your deathbed, what do you want to look back and say you contribute to the collective? But let's just briefly on a day-to-day basis, just finding purpose in, like the Eckhart Tolle side of spirituality, finding purpose in the little things in life. If you are a mom or a dad, finding purpose in raising your kids in a really good and healthy way. If you're in a relationship with someone romantically, finding purpose in cultivating that romantic relationship and improving it on a day-to-day basis, finding purpose in connecting with your animals, your pets, your plants, if you have a lot of plants or you're a gardener, finding purpose in whatever social groups that you connect with, finding purpose in the little things in life, Eckhart Tolle talks about just doing your dishes, finding that sense of presence and doing your dishes. And it's so easy. Our mind always wants to be in that false time matrix of past and future. But the more you can find yourself present with life, the more purposeful it feels. If you are, I played a lot of sports growing up. And when your head's not in the game, you're not as effective. You're not really there for the team. And it feels like it doesn't really matter as much when your head's somewhere else. Your head's thinking about your boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. When you're present and in the game and feeling that zen of everything slows down around you, you're going to be more effective, whatever sport it is, baseball, soccer, whatever. And you're also going to feel more of a purpose. Like it's important to be there for that next shift. It's important to be there for that next at bat. It's important to help the team win, you know, and we can, and we can apply that. It's a very Aries theme too, you know, think about sports, how it applies to life, just applying that day to day. The more you care about the little things in life, the more it feels like life is purposeful. When you're depressed, and I've been depressed many times in my life, many of my clients are depressed. There's brain chemistry issues that go along with that. But when you're depressed, nothing matters that much. And sometimes, very sadly, people get so depressed that life itself doesn't matter, and they decide to exit the planet early, you know, and it's a very sad thing. But the complete opposite end of that spectrum is feeling a sense of purpose. You create the sense of purpose. It's not inherent. Okay. Just sip it. It's such a funny thing to think about, but it's so true. Just, oh, that ginger tea, you know, just like savoring, sipping tea, or savoring going outside, not just when it's sunny. How about when it's cloudy and raining? How about when it's snowing? How about when it's windy? Like trying to savor the sensations of all weather, you know, just savoring, and it's an intentional experience. It comes from your consciousness, it comes from you. You're in control of it ultimately, of how much things in your life actually matter. When they don't matter, you're going to be depressed. When they really matter, you're going to feel this sense of just desire and vigor and wanting to live, loving being alive versus being depressed. And that's up to you. When your brain is working better, which your nutrition and your, you know, taking supplements or medications or whatever to fix your brain chemistry is important. But when your brain's working well and you're feeling purpose in day-to-day life, life is fun. Life is enjoyable. It's exciting. So yeah, let's, you know, just think about day to day, paying more attention. Very basic spirituality, Eckhart Tolle spirituality, I call it. Paying attention to life.
Profound. Simple but profound. It is so true. It's like how we do one thing is how we do everything. It's the
Yeah. How you do
vibration.
the little things will be how you do the big things. Right?
Absolutely. Love this. Love this conversation so much. Matthew, thank you so much for
Thank you for having me. I had such an amazing time. I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you.